18 quiet torches glow beneath the Bodhi leaves. You need only walk forward and let them warm the corridors inside you. The first torch is mindfulness, an invitation to stop rehearsing the past or auditioning for the future. Sit, stand, or walk with the simple conviction that this breath, this footfall, this taste of tea is enough. When you stop abandoning the present moment, you stop abandoning yourself, and people feel the steadiness that follows. Mindfulness is not a special state you achieve on a cushion. It is the ordinary art of arriving. Feel the weight of your body in the chair, the temperature of air on the skin of your wrists, the small pause between the in-breath and the out-breath where nothing is required of you. Each time you notice the mind sprinting ahead or lagging behind, gently usher it back as you would a toddler who has wandered toward traffic. Over months, the practice becomes a background hum, and strangers begin to trust the quality of your attention because they sense you are not already half gone to the next appointment. The second torch is compassion, the art of answering another's ache as though it were your own. Begin by offering yourself the same courtesy. Forgive your stumbles, bandage your regrets, and the reservoir of kindness will spill outward without effort. A door held open, a question asked with the whole face, a refusal to mock someone else's fear. Each is a silent promise that respect will be returned in kind. Compassion is not pity dressed in better clothes. It is the recognition that the boundary between your bloodstream and another's is thinner than you were taught. When the cashier's hand trembles as she counts change, you do not stare at the growing line. You meet her eyes and say, "Take your time, we're all alive right now." The sentence costs nothing, yet it enters her nervous system like a sip of warm broth. Later, when you botch your own presentation, you remember the tremor and speak to yourself with the same softness. Compassion practiced inwardly becomes a secret credential that other hearts read without announcement. The third torch is impermanence, the sky-written reminder that every constellation of circumstance will rearrange. Friends move, jobs dissolve, bodies soften, praise evaporates. When you accept that nothing is auditioning for permanence, you loosen your grip, and the relaxed hand is the one that can still applaud change when it arrives. Walk through an old neighborhood and notice the bakery that became a vape shop, the tree that outgrew its iron fence and lifted the bars like a weightlifter. Nothing signed a contract to stay, yet each departure made room for arrival. Apply the lesson to the ache in your knee, the argument that still replays at 2 a.m., the teenager who no longer wants to be carried to bed. They are all waves naming themselves shore for a moment. Repeat quietly, "This too is moving through." The sentence acts like a finger on the release valve of panic. The chest softens and respect accrues to the person who can stand in the wind without demanding it stop. From impermanence comes the fourth torch, non-attachment. Enjoy the salary, the relationship, the accolades, but do not ask them to certify your worth. Work with intensity, love with depth, then step back before the need to possess hardens into a second skin. Imagine cupping water from a stream. The moment you clamp your fist shut, the water escapes. Hold instead with palms open, marveling at the cool weight that stays a little longer. When the promotion goes to someone younger, when the lover chooses distance, when the gallery says not this year, you will still feel the sting, but it will not define you. Others sense the absence of clutching and instinctively trust the space you offer. They relax the way travelers relax in a hostel where no one padlocks the tea bags. Non-attachment is not sterility. It is the capacity to love fiercely while whispering to the beloved, "Fly if you must." The fifth torch is right speech. Say only what is true, timely and tender enough to be handled without gloves. Refrain from the clever cruelty disguised as honesty, from the gossip that masquerades as concern. Before speaking, pass the intended sentence through 3 gates. Is it accurate? Is it necessary? Is it kind? If it fails any gate, let it wait in silence. Over time, you will notice that your words arrive slower, but land softer. A colleague once described you as the only person who can tell me I'm wrong without making me feel small, and that sentence traveled farther than any resume. Right speech also includes the courage to withhold, to stay quiet when the group is shredding an absent friend, to let the awkward pause stand rather than fill it with speculation. The throat becomes a filter, not a fire hose, and respect pools in the quiet spaces you refuse to poison. The sixth torch is patience, the quiet engine that keeps the heart at cruising speed through traffic jams of frustration. Breathe through the delayed train, the sarcastic email, the child who asks the same question 7 times. Each exhale is evidence that you can hold space without snapping, and calm is the most contagious form of authority. Patience is not the capacity to wait, but the capacity to keep the mind spacious while waiting. When the internet crawls, notice the tension rising like mercury and deliberately soften the jaw, the shoulders, the grip on the mouse. When the elderly man ahead of you counts coins on the checkout belt, study the texture of his coat instead of rehearsing indignation. These micro-practices accumulate into a reputation. People remember that being around you feels like standing in the shade of a slow, old tree. They may not know why they trust you. They simply know that agitation dissolves in your orbit. The seventh torch is gratitude, the daily practice of noticing what is still intact. Write 3 sentences that begin with "fortunately," and you will remember the lunch someone shared, the lungs that kept going through the night, the roof that withheld the storm. A person who keeps a ledger of blessings never bankrupts the room with complaint. Make the list tactile. The exact red of the cardinal against gray siding, the smell of coffee that appeared bedside without request, the stranger who caught your eye and nodded when the subway emptied its grief into the station. Read the list aloud. Let the tongue taste each syllable. Over months, the brain rewires, scanning for gifts the way a child scans tide pools for shells. Gratitude becomes a reflex, and respect follows because people feel safe near someone who broadcasts, "Life is reliably more generous than it appears." Gratitude opens the gate to the 8th torch, self-reflection. Once a week, sit alone with paper and ask, where did I add weight to the day and where did I add light? Catalog the answers without courtroom drama. The habit of inspecting your own footprints before judging another's erodes arrogance and lays down the soft soil where respect germinates. Begin with facts, not verdicts. I interrupted Maya twice. I emptied the dishwasher without being asked. I scrolled an hour instead of calling Dad. Then ask the deeper strata. What fear made me interrupt? What small pleasure made the chore effortless? What ache was I numbing with the scroll? Over years, the questions become surgical, separating motive from excuse until you can hold even your ugliest moment with the curiosity of a scientist holding a rare, ugly beetle. People sense the absence of self-delusion and relax. The way hikers relax when the guide admits he too has slipped on this trail. The 9th torch is humility, the gentle admission that the universe is not your private stage. Praise the colleague whose idea saved the meeting. Laugh at the joke you did not invent, confess the recipe that failed. When you step out of the center, room appears for others to step in and the circle widens. Humility is not self-deprecation. It is accurate accounting. You are talented. You are flawed. You are temporary. Speak of your victories as windfall weather, not personal weather machines. Speak of your defeats as weather too, not cosmic punishment. The tone is important. No fishing for reassurance, no false modesty that clanks like cheap armor. Simply state facts and pass the talking stick. Over time, the team begins to volunteer ideas near you. The teenager asks your opinion on mixtapes. The elder tells you stories that were hoarded for decades. They feel enlarged, not diminished, in your presence, and that feeling is the currency of lasting respect. The 10th torch is right livelihood, the resolve to earn your bread without poisoning the baker, the customer, or the river that turns the mill. Choose work that lets you sleep without a lawyer between you and your conscience. Integrity in trade is the rare currency that appreciates in every market. If you are already trapped in a compromised industry, begin the incremental migration. 1 course at night, 1 ethical client pro bono, 1 conversation with the supervisor about sourcing. The transition may take years, but each micro-choice is a deposit in an account labeled, "The person I can face in the mirror." Colleagues watch the slow pivot. Some mock, some follow. Most quietly store the data that you refuse to monetize deceit. When the layoffs come, the clients remember who never padded hours, and offers arrive like lifeboats. Right livelihood is not a luxury for the privileged. It is a long obedience that eventually rewrites your business card into something you can hand to a child without flinching. The 11th torch, forgiveness, burns away the resin of resentment. Pardon yourself for the promise broken at 23. Pardon the friend who forgot your birthday. Liberation is not the same as endorsement. It is simply a refusal to keep drinking vinegar because someone else once served it. Forgiveness begins as a private chemistry experiment. List the grievance, feel the heat rise, then watch the cooling that arrives when you admit the hidden benefit you gained. Perhaps the clarity that the friendship was lopsided. Perhaps the courage you discovered in surviving. When you can name the lesson, the knot loosens. Next, write the sentence you wish had been spoken. I was hurt and I needed to hear. Read it aloud, voice shaking or steady. Finally, burn the paper and scatter the ashes on soil you will plant herbs in. The ritual is symbolic, but the body believes symbols. One day you meet the offender and realize the story no longer tightens your throat. That spaciousness is felt as mercy, and mercy is always respected. Forgiveness clears the ground for the 12th torch, contentment. Reduce the clutter of wants until the remaining desires can breathe. Eat simple food, keep the shirt until it frays, walk the same beloved path each dawn. A heart that declares enough becomes a quiet magnet for those exhausted by hunger. Contentment is not the abandonment of ambition, it is the refusal to chase ghosts. Before acquiring anything, ask, will this still matter on the first rainy Tuesday of next year? If the answer is hesitation, leave the item on the shelf. The money unspent becomes freedom units. Hours you can later trade for reading to a child or sitting beside a river doing absolutely nothing. People feel the surplus of time in your gait, the unhurried way you stir coffee, the willingness to linger in a conversation that is going nowhere urgent. That leisure is the opposite of laziness. It is the wealth that cannot be stolen, and it commands a peculiar reverence. The 13th torch is generosity, the natural overflow of a content heart. Share the last slice, the spare hour, the knowledge you spent years earning. Give without audit, and the act will circle back as reputation. But let the consequence be a side effect, not the goal. Generosity is not always material. Sometimes it is the willingness to be the person who laughs first at the nervous comic, who reviews the stranger's resume at midnight, who teaches the intern how to format the spreadsheet without sighing. Track the internal sensation. Notice the brief expansion in the chest when the gift leaves your hand, the way the day feels suddenly roomier. That private buoyancy is the true payoff. Any future favor is merely interest. Over decades, the network of people you watered becomes an orchard that shades you. But the math is secondary to the immediate pleasure of watching someone realize they are not alone in their confusion. The 14th torch is equanimity, the even keel that neither crows in triumph nor capsizes in setback. Meet praise and insult the way a mountain meets warm wind and cold, both pass, the mountain remains. Equanimity is not numbness. It is the capacity to feel fully without being recruited by every feeling. Practice by labeling sensations as weather. This is a storm of embarrassment. This is a drizzle of doubt. The naming creates a sliver of distance, enough to prevent identification. In conversation, notice the urge to correct, to defend, to overstate. Let the urge crest and recede like a wave you have no obligation to surf. One day the promotion bypasses you and you observe the spike of adrenaline, the narrative of injustice, then watch them dissolve. Colleagues remember the absence of tantrum, the steady voice that still credited the team. That memory becomes lore and lore becomes respect. Equanimity shelters the 15th torch, inner peace. Cultivate silence daily. No headphones, no scrolling, just the sound of your own pulse keeping faithful time. Peace is not an achievement to frame, but a climate to maintain. When it settles in your chest, strangers breathe easier beside you. Create a ritual of returning. Perhaps the same chair at dawn, the same cracked mug, the same 4 bars of Bach. Let the ritual be boring. Boredom is the velvet rope that keeps the spectacle of news feeds outside. Over months, the silence thickens into a private lake, where thoughts can surface without being immediately hooked. One evening you notice the impulse to argue with a headline has evaporated, replaced by curiosity about the fear beneath the headline. That curiosity is peace in motion, and it leaks into the household, the office, the grocery line, until people stand near you the way travelers stand near cathedral walls. Without knowing why, they lower their voices and slow their pulse. The 16th torch is mindful consumption. Before you click buy, before you swallow another headline, ask, does this nourish or numb? Choose the apple over the plastic-wrapped mimic, the documentary over the outrage feed. A person who refuses to litter the world with careless choices becomes a quiet curator of the commons. Extend the question to time. Does this hour-long scroll leave me more awake or more anesthetized? To relationships. Does this conversation recycle resentment or compost it into something fertile? The practice is microscopic. One less bottle, one more deep breath before replying. But the aggregation is macroscopic. Over years, your trash can stays politely empty. Your calendar develops margins, your language loses the shrill edge of panic. People feel the spaciousness the way parkgoers feel the absence of billboards. They may not articulate it. They simply know that here, the air tastes different. The 17th torch is kindness, the low-cost, high-yield investment that pays dividends in every currency of heart. Compliment the cashier's earrings, shovel the neighbor's walk before dawn, speak softly to the anxious dog. Kindness is not a strategy. It is the spontaneous overflow of remembering that everyone is carrying something invisible. Keep a private tally if you must, not for pride but for pattern. How many times today did I leave a micro-upgrade in another's bloodstream? The tally will reveal days when you gave nothing, and those are the days you were most in need of kindness yourself. Apply the remedy. Step outside and send a voice memo to a friend simply listing 3 things you admire about them. Your own pulse slows as you speak. The kindness loops back like a boomerang and the residue of self-reproach dissolves. Over decades, the compound interest is a reputation for being the person who makes the day feel roomier. And that reputation is a form of respect no title can override. The 18th and final torch is self-compassion, the root system that feeds every other virtue. Speak to your reflection as you would to a child awakened by thunder. You are still worthy of gentleness. Replace the inner drill sergeant with an inner witness who notes failure the way a biologist notes specimen. Interesting data. What does it indicate about fatigue, fear, misplaced priority? The tone is curious, not prosecutorial. When you catch yourself in the old loop of catastrophizing, place a hand on the sternum and inhale for 4 counts. Exhale for 6. The physiology interrupts the psychology. The vagus nerve signals safety, and the story loosens. Over years, the voice in your head becomes the voice others hear in your absence. Calm, amused, forgiving. That voice is the final magnet for respect, because people intuit that whoever treats themselves with mercy will extend the same to them. Carry these torches not as a performance for applause, but as the quiet architecture of a life too steady to shake. Let them illuminate each other. Mindfulness noticing the urge to speak unkindly. Compassion softening the urge. Right speech replacing it. Impermanence undercutting the attachment that patience must endure. Gratitude fertilizing the generosity that equanimity distributes without anxiety. The interplay is not linear but orchestral. Some days the strings of kindness swell. Other days the percussion of impermanence dominates. Yet the symphony is unmistakably yours. Respect will follow the way morning light follows the horizon. First a rumor, then a flood you no longer have to chase. You will recognize its arrival in small currencies. The colleague who once interrupted now waits for your pause. The teenager who rolled his eyes now asks your opinion on colleges. The stranger on the plane who confides a grief she cannot tell her family. None of them will say, "I respect you because you practiced 18 Buddhist principles." They will simply feel that near you, the air is breathable, the day negotiable, the self less in need of armor. And that feeling is the quiet, irreversible revolution that begins the moment you decide to carry the first small torch into the ordinary weather of an ordinary Tuesday and keep walking.